So one of the million-dollar questions of playing blues guitar is, how do you come up with licks and how do you practice improvising? I guess that's really two questions. This exercise that I'm going to show you today is a way that you can work on both of those things. It's a way to come up with licks that work, and it's a way to practice improvising with them so that you can retrieve them on the fly or even vary them as you go. Improvisation is one of the three main things that I teach in my membership, the Fingerstyle 5. And if you'd like to take a deeper dive into developing your blues vocabulary and your fingerstyle blues improvisation, check out the Fingerstyle 5 membership over at fretboardconfidential.com. So this exercise is basically a call and response between blues licks in the upper register and a recurring bass response in the bass register. And the licks all start basically on the end of 1. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1. And some of them land right on the downbeat. And some of them anticipate the downbeat by landing on the end of 4. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But they all have basically the same shape. So they will all fit into this little one measure space, which you can then respond to with that recurring bass riff. And all the licks are basically built out of very simple elements. It's minor pentatonic notes plus the blues scale note, the flat 5. That one right there. And then some major pentatonic notes, like the major 6. And so with just those simple elements, you can come up with a few different kinds of licks. And as long as they fall within that same kind of phrasing, they'll all work in that little one measure pocket in between every bass run. And in fact, the phrasing is the key. If you drop those kinds of pentatonic and blues notes into that recurring kind of phrasing, starting on the end of 1 and finishing up on either the end of 4 or the downbeat of 1, those licks will always have a certain sense of logic, especially if they resolve to the root. If the last note you play is going to be, in this case, an E or an E. So a lick like this works the same way as a lick like this. They do the same thing rhythmically, more or less, so they always have this sense of resolution. And so they also will each fit into that little one measure pocket, giving you time to do that bass response. And this is basically one of those ideas about sparking your creativity by setting up some limitations. So you only have this one measure each time, you've got to get out at a certain point, and so it kind of makes you channel your creativity into that pathway. And so we're only really using these pentatonic scales. You've only got to measure each time. You've got to land on the root. That's 3 rules right there. So everything you do is going to have to kind of fit with that. Now, obviously, you don't have to do that when you go to solo, but this is an exercise, and the point of an exercise is to give you focus and say, try this with these limitations, and if you can execute that, then you'll suddenly realize you've got this capacity to take this limited idea and expand on it and go elsewhere with it once you've kind of gotten it together in this very specific way. So let's just look at the first couple of licks that we're using. So this first one starts off, it's a hammer-on onto the 6th, over to the root, back to the 6th, flat 3rd, root, 6, root. And the timing is 1, 2, and 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And the second lick is the double stop lick that goes. And so here we've got flat 5 to 4 to flat 3 to 4 to flat 3 to root to root. And then there are 3 moments in that lick when you're also grabbing the high string like this. So basically each time you're picking the third string, you're also picking the high string. But after you pick the third string the first time, you're going to slide and pull off. And so you're not going to pick the third string again until you get back to the fourth, and then play the flat third. Like that. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Like that. And finally, there's that bass response. And that's just walking up from the root to the major third, to the fourth, to the flat 5, to the 5. And the count is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you've got a hammer on, and then another one here. So hammer on from the root to the major third, and then hammer on from flat 5 to 5. And that leaves a whole measure in between bass riffs, which is where you're going to put the licks on top. So when you do start to put the licks together with the bass run, you get this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Like that. So that's basically the exercise. And the idea is once you have that phrasing and that pocket to put it in and that bass line to play around them, you can make up additional licks using that same kind of phrasing. And so you just have to think 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2, 3, 4. And all those licks would work because they would all have the similar phrasing that drops in to that pocket you create with the bass line. So start out just alternating those first 2 licks with the bass run. And from there, you can sit down and try to work out a few more licks with that same phrasing and then drop those in as well. Like you don't have to try to do this on the fly at first. If you have to sit down and slowly work out each individual lick so that it sounds good and it resolves the right way, that's cool. And then once you have a couple of those worked out, just try to replace the ones that we've done at the beginning here with the licks that you've worked out. And of course, at some point, you could also change up the bass line too, right? So you could have... Right, you could have a little call and response between the different bass lines, but that's a whole other proposition, which is, as they say, beyond the scope of this current exercise. All right, so try that out and see if it helps you get more of a grip on how to start putting licks together and how to start playing them a little more on the fly so that you can start to have a vocabulary of licks that you can swap in and out when you're trying to improvise. And for a more in-depth, deep dive look at how to improvise as a fingerstyle blues guitar player, check out my membership, the Fingerstyle 5, which you can learn more about at fretboardconfidential.com. In the meantime, if you've got a question or a comment about today's lesson, leave it for me down below. I'd love to hear from you. And as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.